Earth's skies had a way of telling stories. Under their vast expanse, Eldrin, a woman unlike any of Earth, had found solace years ago. Her silvery skin shimmered faintly like moonlight, and her eyes, swirling with hues of blue and violet, captured the universe's mysteries. Back then, she had met him, a human man whose gaze held both wonder and warmth. They had crossed paths in an unplanned moment, one of those fleeting encounters that felt destined. For Eldrin, coming to Earth had been a mission, a diplomatic endeavor her people had orchestrated to learn, trade, and build alliances with the curious beings of this blue planet. But amidst the negotiations and explorations, there had been him. He called himself Orin. He didn't care about her origin, or the fact that her voice carried melodies that humans couldn't quite replicate. To him, Eldrin was not just an alien. She was a person with dreams and emotions as vivid as his own. The night they first met was etched into her mind like starlight on a calm sea. Orin had shown her a tiny glowing sphere, calling it a firefly. Eldrin had never seen something so small yet so full of life. When she reached out, the firefly had landed gently on her hand. Orin's laughter was soft, and the way he looked at her, it was as if she was not a visitor from another world but a marvel he had never expected. For weeks, they spent time together. Eldrin learned about Earth's music, its art, and its love stories. Orin learned about the infinite expanse of her homeworld, where the oceans glowed at night and the sky was always alive with dancing lights. But time was not their ally. Eldrin's people, though kind, were bound by rules. She had to leave Earth, to continue her mission elsewhere. Her farewell to Orin had been wordless yet profound, a shared look that said all the things neither dared speak aloud. Now, 5 years later, Eldrin returned. She had told herself it was just a fleeting visit, a check-in on the progress her people had made. But her heart betrayed her logical mind. It beat faster, her thoughts circling only around Orin. Would he remember her? Had he moved on? The landscape had changed. Earth was still beautiful but marked by signs of growth and change. Eldrin found herself walking through the same forest where she had once laughed, marveled, and dreamed with Orin. Her footsteps faltered when she reached a clearing. There, standing amidst the trees, was a small structure, a cabin. And by its door stood Orin. Time had left its mark on him, a few more lines on his face and a touch of silver in his hair. Yet his presence was the same, steady, warm, and familiar. He looked up, sensing her presence, and for a moment, neither moved. "Eldrin," he whispered, his voice like the wind, carrying both disbelief and longing. Her heart surged. "Orin," she replied, her voice trembling. She hadn't realized until that moment just how much she had missed him, how much his presence had imprinted on her very essence. The air between them held an unspoken tension, thick with emotions neither could yet put into words. Orin stepped closer, his eyes scanning Eldrin as if afraid she might vanish like a dream. Her silvery skin shimmered faintly under the sunlight, and her violet-blue eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I never thought I'd see you again," Orin said, his voice laced with a mixture of wonder and disbelief. Eldrin smiled softly, her lips curving in that serene way Orin had always found mesmerizing. "Neither did I," she admitted. "But someone, kept pulling me back." His heart skipped a beat. It was hard to tell if her words were meant for him, but the intensity in her gaze left little doubt. Orin motioned toward the cabin, his voice gentle. "Do you want to come in? We can talk. If you have time." "I have all the time now," Eldrin said, her tone carrying a wistful note. The cabin was simple yet inviting, filled with handcrafted wooden furniture and shelves lined with books. A faint smell of freshly brewed tea lingered in the air. Orin poured her a cup, and they sat across from each other at a small table near the window. For a moment, neither spoke. Orin watched as Eldrin cradled the mug in her hands, her fingers delicate yet strong. She seemed to be absorbing every detail, as if grounding herself in this moment. "You've been doing well," she finally said, her voice warm but hesitant. Orin chuckled softly, the sound easing some of the tension. "I've been surviving. Earth keeps moving forward, and so do I. But I never forgot you, Eldrin." His words hung in the air like a confession, and his eyes searched hers for a reaction. Her breath hitched. "I never forgot you either. Not a single day passed where I didn't think of the nights we spent under the stars, the stories we shared." She paused, her voice growing softer. Your kindness, your warmth. It stayed with me. Oren leaned forward slightly, his expression earnest. Then why didn't you come back sooner? Did something stop you? Eldrin hesitated, her gaze dropping to her hands. My people, they value logic above all else. Attachments, emotions, they see them as distractions. I convinced myself they were right, that leaving you was for the best. She looked up, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. But I was wrong. I felt incomplete ever since. I just didn't know if you'd want to see me again. Oren reached across the table, his hand resting on hers. His touch was warm, grounding, and filled with unspoken emotions. Eldrin, I waited. I hoped. I didn't know if you'd ever return, but not a day went by that I didn't think of you. Her heart swelled, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope. Oren, I'm here now, and I don't want to leave again. If you'll have me, I want to stay. His grip on her hand tightened slightly, a silent promise. You'll always have a place here, Eldrin. Always. The moment stretched between them, heavy with emotions. Outside the window, the golden light of the setting sun bathed the forest in a warm glow, as if nature itself was celebrating their reunion. Eldrin's lips trembled with a hesitant smile. Do you still have the fireflies here? She asked, a playful glint returning to her eyes. Oren chuckled, standing up and offering her his hand. They're still here. Let's go find them. They stepped out into the clearing, the cool evening air wrapping around them. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the first tiny lights began to flicker, dotting the darkness like miniature stars. Eldrin laughed softly, her voice like a melody, as a firefly landed on her hand once more. I missed this, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I missed you. Oren stood beside her, his gaze fixed on her radiant smile. And I missed us. For the first time in years, they felt whole again. Beneath the starlit sky and amidst the glow of fireflies, they silently promised each other that this time they would not let go. The days that followed felt like a dream neither wanted to wake from. Eldrin stayed in the cabin, sharing quiet mornings and laughter-filled evenings with Oren. Their conversations wove a tapestry of memories and newfound connections, as if no time had passed between them. Eldrin, who had once been a curious observer of Earth, now immersed herself in its simplest joys. She marveled at the feel of rain on her skin, the rustle of leaves in the wind, and the way Oren's laughter could light up even the grayest of skies. One evening, they stood together at the edge of a small lake near the cabin. The water reflected the twilight sky, rippling softly as a cool breeze passed. Eldrin tilted her head back, her violet-blue eyes gazing at the stars above. Your world is so alive, she said, her voice filled with awe. It's imperfect, chaotic, but that's what makes it beautiful. Every sound, every scent, it feels like it's all trying to tell a story. Oren smiled, watching her as she spoke. And what story is it telling you now? Eldrin turned to him, her expression softening. That I belong here. That this is where I was meant to be. Her words struck something deep within Oren. He reached out, brushing a strand of her shimmering hair away from her face. Eldrin, your presence has brought a kind of peace to my life I didn't know I needed. When you left, it was like losing a piece of myself. But now, with you here, he trailed off, his voice catching with emotion. Eldrin's lips parted, and for a moment, she simply looked at him. Then, slowly, she stepped closer. Oren, she whispered, her voice trembling, I've always carried you with me. Even when I tried to move on, to forget. My heart wouldn't let me. His hand cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing against her silken skin. I'm glad it didn't, he murmured. The world around them seemed to hold its breath as their faces drew closer. When their lips finally met, it was as though the universe itself exhaled, releasing years of tension and longing in a single, gentle kiss. In the days that followed, Eldrin began to share more about her life, her people, and the challenges she had faced after leaving Earth. Oren listened intently, fascinated by the intricate details of her world, a place where logic reigned supreme, where emotions were considered weaknesses, and where connections like the one she shared with him were seen as a threat to order. You must have been so lonely, Oren said one night as they sat by the fireplace, the warm glow casting soft shadows on their faces. I was, Eldrin admitted, her voice tinged with sorrow. But I tried to convince myself it was for the greater good. that sacrificing my happiness would benefit my people. Still, the memories of you, they never faded. It was those memories that gave me the strength to return. Oren reached out, taking her hand in his. You don't have to face that loneliness anymore. We'll figure this out together. Whatever challenges come our way, we'll face them as one. Eldrin's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and she squeezed his hand tightly. I don't deserve this kind of love, Oren. Not after leaving you. Don't say that, he said firmly. You came back. That's what matters. And if you hadn't left, we wouldn't have this moment now, this second chance. As the days turned to weeks, Eldrin and Oren began to dream of a future together. But beneath their shared joy, there was an undercurrent of uncertainty. Eldrin's people would not ignore her prolonged absence, and Oren knew that her presence on Earth was not something the rest of humanity would easily accept. One afternoon, as they walked through the forest, Eldrin stopped abruptly, her gaze distant. Oren, there's something I need to tell you, she said, her voice heavy with hesitation. He turned to her, concern etched on his face. What is it? My people, they will come looking for me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. And when they do, they may not be pleased to find me here. Oren frowned, his mind racing. What will they do? I don't know, she admitted. But my decision to return to Earth, my decision to be with you, it goes against everything they stand for. They might try to force me to leave, or worse, they might see you as a threat. Oren's jaw tightened, and his hands clenched into fists. I won't let anyone take you away from me, Eldrin. Not again. She placed a hand on his chest, her touch calming yet firm. We have to be careful, Oren. I don't want to put you in danger. But I won't leave you, not willingly. Not ever. Their eyes met, and in that moment, they made an unspoken vow. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Their love, forged in the stars and tested by time, would not be broken. The peace they had found began to waver as the days passed. Eldrin had been right. Her people were not ones to let disobedience go unnoticed. One night, under a sky veiled with clouds, Eldrin felt it before she saw it, a ripple in the air, a hum that vibrated in her very bones. They're here, she whispered, her voice trembling. Oren looked up from where he was chopping wood by the cabin. What do you mean? Eldrin's gaze darted to the horizon, her shimmering eyes narrowing as a faint light appeared far off in the distance. A retrieval pod. They've come for me. Panic surged through Oren. What do we do? Do we hide? Fight? Eldrin shook her head, her expression torn between fear and resolve. They'll find me no matter where I go. Their technology is advanced. Running will only make it worse. But I won't let them harm you, Oren. He stepped closer, his hands gripping her shoulders. And I won't let them take you away. Not again. Their moment of shared determination was cut short by a piercing sound, like the air itself being torn apart. A sleek, metallic vessel descended into the clearing, its surface smooth and gleaming under the moonlight. The hum grew louder as the craft settled on the ground, its entrance opening with an ominous hiss. 3 figures emerged, their forms similar to Eldrin's but taller and more imposing. Their silvery skin gleamed brighter, their eyes colder, devoid of the warmth that Oren had come to love in Eldrin. The one at the front, a man with sharp, angular features, stepped forward. Eldrin, he said, his voice commanding and devoid of emotion. You violated the directives of the High Council. Return with us immediately. Eldrin stood tall, though Oren could see the tension in her posture. I am not going back, she said firmly. My place is here. The man's eyes narrowed, and his gaze shifted to Oren. This human is the reason for your defiance. It wasn't a question but an accusation. Oren stepped forward, his chin raised defiantly. She's not a prisoner. She's free to choose where she wants to be. The man's cold gaze swept over him, as if assessing a pest. You misunderstand, human. Eldrin belongs to the collective. Her emotions, her desires, they are irrelevant. Eldrin's voice rang out, sharp and filled with conviction. No. I am more than a tool for the Council. I have a heart, and I have made my choice. My life is mine to live. The 2 other aliens shifted slightly, as if her words unsettled them, but the leader remained unmoved. You are blinded by your attachment, Eldrin. Come willingly, or we will use force. Oren's fists clenched. You'll have to go through me first. The leader's gaze flickered with mild annoyance. Human, you are no match for us. Stand aside, or you will regret it. Before Oren could respond, Eldrin stepped in front of him, her hand raised. No. If you harm him, I will never forgive you. Leave us, or you will face my resistance. The leader's expression darkened. Resistance? Against your own kind. Yes, Eldrin said, her voice steady. Because I've learned something you haven't. Love is not a weakness. It's a strength. And it's worth fighting for. The leader's composure cracked for the briefest moment, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. You leave us no choice. He raised his hand, a small device glowing in his palm. Suddenly, the clearing lit up as a burst of energy shot toward Eldrin. Oren's instincts took over, and he threw himself in front of her. The energy struck him, sending him sprawling to the ground. Oren! Eldrin cried, dropping to her knees beside him. The leader lowered his hand, his expression unreadable. Enough of this. Eldrin, come with us now, or he will not survive. Tears streamed down Eldrin's face as she cradled Oren, his breath shallow but steady. She looked up at the leader, her eyes blazing with fury. You would sacrifice an innocent life for your rigid rules? You have lost your way. With a sudden burst of determination, Eldrin rose to her feet. She extended her hands, and for the first time, Oren saw the true power she held. A soft, glowing light emanated from her palms, spreading outward like a shield. The leader and his companion stepped back, their faces showing a mix of shock and awe. What are you doing? The leader demanded. I am protecting what matters to me, Eldrin said, her voice echoing with strength. I will not be controlled by fear or duty. I choose love. I choose him. The shield expanded, forcing the aliens to retreat toward their vessel. The leader's expression hardened. This isn't over, Eldrin. The Council will not forget this defiance. With that, the aliens retreated into their craft, and it rose into the sky, disappearing into the night. Eldrin fell to her knees beside Oren, her hands trembling as she placed them over his chest. The glow returned, softer this time, as she focused her energy on healing him. Slowly, his eyes fluttered open. Eldrin, he whispered, his voice weak but filled with relief. She smiled through her tears. I'm here, Oren. I'm not going anywhere. He reached up, his hand brushing against her cheek. You saved me. And I'd do it again, she said softly. You're my home, Oren. No matter what happens, I'll fight for us. As the stars returned to the night sky, the two of them sat together, holding on to each other with a love stronger than fear, ready to face whatever came next. The days following the confrontation were filled with an uneasy calm. Oren recovered quickly, thanks to Eldrin's healing touch, but the encounter left them both shaken. The looming threat of her people's return was a shadow over their newfound happiness. Yet amidst the uncertainty, they clung to each other, finding solace in the strength of their bond. One morning, as the first rays of sunlight painted the forest in gold, Oren sat on the cabin's porch, carving a piece of wood. His hands worked deftly, shaping it into a small figure, a firefly. Eldrin watched him from the doorway, her gaze soft and filled with admiration. You're quite skilled at that, she said, stepping closer. Oren smiled, looking up at her. It helps me think. And right now, I'm thinking about how to keep us safe. Eldrin sat beside him, her silvery skin glowing faintly in the morning light. We don't have to fight this alone, she said quietly. What do you mean? My people may be ruled by logic, but not all of them agree with the Council's ways. There are those who believe in something greater, in freedom, in love. If I can reach them, perhaps we can change things. Oren set the carving down, his brow furrowing. That sounds dangerous, Eldrin. What if they see you as a traitor? Her eyes met his, steady and resolute. They already do. But if I don't try, we'll always be running, always looking over our shoulders. I don't want that for us, Oren. I want a life where we can be free to love without fear. His hand covered hers, his grip firm. If you're going to do this, you won't do it alone. We'll face it together. Eldrin smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude and love. "You're braver than you know, Oren. And I'm so lucky to have found you." The next few days were spent preparing. Eldrin used her knowledge of her people's technology to create a small device that could send a message to the dissenters within her world. It was risky. If the council intercepted it, their situation could worsen, but it was a risk worth taking. When the message was ready, Eldrin and Oren stood in the clearing where the confrontation had taken place. The device, a small, glowing sphere, pulsed faintly in her hands. "Are you sure about this?" Oren asked, his voice laced with concern. Eldrin nodded. "It's our best chance." She activated the device, and a beam of light shot into the sky, disappearing into the atmosphere. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the sphere dimmed, its energy spent. "Now we wait," she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. Days turned into weeks, and though life returned to a semblance of normalcy, the uncertainty lingered. Eldrin and Oren continued to build their life together, tending to the cabin, exploring the forest, and sharing quiet moments under the stars. One evening, as they sat by the lake, Oren leaned back on his elbows, gazing at the sky. "You know, I used to think the stars were just distant lights, too far away to ever touch. But now, sitting here with you, they feel closer." Eldrin smiled, lying down beside him. "That's the beauty of love, Oren. It makes the impossible feel within reach." He turned to her, his eyes searching hers. "Do you think they'll respond? The ones who believe in what you do?" "I hope so," she said softly. "But even if they don't, we'll find a way. Together." Their hope was answered one night, when a soft hum filled the air. Eldrin and Oren rushed outside to see a smaller, sleeker vessel descending into the clearing. Unlike the previous craft, this one was less intimidating, its design elegant and unassuming. From the vessel emerged two figures, a woman and a man, both with the same silvery skin and violet-blue eyes as Eldrin. The woman stepped forward, her expression warm but cautious. "Eldrin," she said, her voice gentle, "you took a great risk reaching out to us." "I had to," Eldrin replied, her voice steady. "I can't live under the Council's rules anymore. And I'm not the only one who feels this way." The man nodded. "You're right. There are many who question the Council's authority, who long for something more. But defying them openly, it won't be easy." Eldrin stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. "Nothing worth having is ever easy. But I'm willing to fight for a better future, for all of us." The woman's gaze shifted to Oren, who stood beside Eldrin with quiet strength. "And this human, he's the reason you've taken this stand?" "He's more than a reason," Eldrin said, her voice filled with emotion. "He's my heart, my home." The woman's expression softened, and she nodded. "Then we will help you, Eldrin. But we must be careful. The Council will not take this rebellion lightly." That night, under the cover of darkness, the group discussed their plans. Eldrin's allies spoke of others who shared their ideals, scattered across distant worlds. Slowly but surely, a network of resistance was forming, united by a belief in freedom and love. For the first time in weeks, Eldrin and Oren felt a glimmer of hope. They weren't alone in their fight. Together, they were building something new, something worth risking everything for. As the night wore on, Eldrin leaned her head on Oren's shoulder, her hand intertwined with his. "No matter what happens," she said softly, "I'm glad I chose this path." "I'm glad I chose you." He kissed the top of her head, his voice steady and full of conviction. "We'll make it through this, Eldrin. Together." The stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if bearing witness to their unbreakable bond and the courage that fueled their love. The following months were a whirlwind of secrecy and determination. Eldrin's message had ignited a spark among those who shared her belief in freedom and love. Her cabin in the forest became a hub of quiet resistance, visited by others like her who dared to dream of a different future. Each visitor brought stories of oppression under the Council, tales of lives lived in quiet despair. But they also brought hope, small acts of defiance, whispers of rebellion spreading across the stars. Eldrin and Oren became symbols of something greater, a union between worlds, a promise that love could triumph over fear. One night, as a chill breeze swept through the forest, Eldrin and Oren stood together on the porch of the cabin, gazing at the night sky. The stars seemed closer than ever, their light brighter, as if they, too, were part of the growing resistance. Do you think it will be enough? Orin asked, his voice quiet but steady. Eldrin reached for his hand, her fingers lacing through his. It has to be. We've come too far to turn back now. As if on cue, the hum of an approaching vessel broke the stillness. A sleek craft descended into the clearing, its surface shimmering like liquid silver. From it emerged the same two figures who had first answered Eldrin's call. The woman, Lyria, stepped forward, her expression grave. The Council has discovered our plans. They know of your role, Eldrin. They will come for you soon. Orin's jaw tightened. Then we'll be ready. Lyria hesitated, her gaze shifting to Eldrin. There's more. The Council has declared your bond with this human as a violation of the highest order. They will use it to justify their actions. Eldrin's grip on Orin's hand tightened. Then we make our stand here. If they want to silence us, they'll have to face the truth we've built. The days that followed were tense but purposeful. Eldrin's allies helped fortify the cabin, creating shields and defenses using technology far beyond Orin's understanding. Despite the tension, there was an undercurrent of hope. Each act of preparation was a statement. They would not back down. On the eve of the confrontation, Eldrin and Orin sat by the lake, their reflections dancing on the water's surface. The quiet was almost deceptive, a calm before the storm. Eldrin rested her head on Orin's shoulder. If tomorrow doesn't go as we hope, she began, her voice faltering. It will, Orin said firmly, turning to face her. I believe in you, Eldrin. In us. We've already come so far. And no matter what happens, I'll stand by you. Tears glistened in her eyes as she leaned in, her lips brushing against his in a kiss that was both a promise and a farewell to fear. When dawn broke, the Council's forces arrived. The clearing filled with a low hum of vessels, their sleek forms casting long shadows over the forest. Eldrin stood at the forefront, her allies behind her, their expressions determined. The leader of the Council emerged, his presence as cold and imposing as the first time Orin had seen him. His voice carried across the clearing like a blade. Eldrin, you have defied the will of the Council for the last time. Surrender now, and we may show leniency. Eldrin stepped forward, her voice strong and unwavering. Your rules are built on fear and control. I will not live in chains, and neither will anyone else who chooses freedom. The leader's eyes narrowed. And this human, you risk everything for a fleeting emotion. Orin stepped beside her, his stance firm. It's not fleeting. It's real. Something your rules will never understand. The leader raised his hand, and a beam of energy shot toward them. But this time, they were ready. The shield Eldrin had created flared to life, absorbing the attack and sending ripples of energy outward. Her allies sprang into action, using their advanced technology to disable the Council's vessels. The battle was swift and decisive, the Council's forces unprepared for the Resistance's resolve. As the last of the vessels retreated into the sky, the clearing fell silent. Eldrin and Orin stood together, their breaths heavy but triumphant. Lyria approached, her expression a mix of relief and admiration. You did it, Eldrin. We did it. Eldrin nodded, her gaze shifting to Orin. No, we all did. Together. In the days that followed, the ripple effects of their victory spread across the stars. The Council's grip weakened as more of Eldrin's people joined the movement. Their cabin became a symbol of hope, a beacon for those seeking a better future. Eldrin and Orin's love, once seen as an anomaly, became a testament to the power of connection. Together, they proved that love was not a weakness but the strongest force in the universe. One evening, as they watched the sunset from the porch, Orin turned to Eldrin, his eyes filled with warmth. Do you think they'll ever understand what we've built here? Eldrin smiled, her hand resting on his. Maybe not all of them. But that doesn't matter. What we have, what we've fought for, is enough. As the stars began to dot the sky, they held each other close, ready to face whatever the future held. For in each other, they had found not just love, but a purpose worth fighting for. The universe stretched vast and infinite before them, but in that moment, it felt smaller, warmer. Together, they had built a bridge between worlds, one rooted in courage, hope, and an unbreakable bond.